What's up, everybody? This is Kin, and welcome to the next podcast in the series I'm making to help you guys learn English faster and prepare for your IELTS test a lot more effectively. And today we're gonna talk about a lot of things. Firstly, we're gonna talk about whether universities should accept equal numbers of male and female students in every single subject. Gosh, how weird is this question? Well, just to think about how impractical this, educational initiative would be. And it is quite harmful as well because it's gonna promote sexism. So I'll just dig deep into the reasons why I said so. So firstly, having the same number of men and women on all degree courses is completely unrealistic. For example, nursing courses tend to attract more female applicants, and it would be extremely difficult to fill these courses if 50% of the places needed to go to males. Chances are that they would not receive enough male applicants. And by the very same token, science subjects, where the vast majority of students are men, would also experience the same problem because female students are just not really big on sciencey things. I just wonder where universities could find people to fill in all those empty spots where those slots were supposed to go to male or female students. So in other words, it would be impractical to aim for equal proportions for both genders in each and every single degree courses in universities. Well, I guess there's some people who believe that it is fair to base admission to university courses on gender because they may believe that by doing so, schools provide both men and women with equal opportunities to go to college, and this would somehow promote equality among sexes. But this line of reasoning is flimsy at best, because if a female student is the best candidate for a place on a course, it would surely be wrong to reject her in favor of a male student who may achieve lower grades or fewer qualifications or may not even be interested in the course. So by no means is it fair to base the selection of university students on gender rather than merit. Gosh, this topic is really weird. It's so peculiar. I haven't been asked this question before, but when I read this topic, I felt like the test writer must have been sexist in a way, because it seems like he or she, that must be a she, so she is kind of claiming the right for women or something. But anyway, we've talked about that very peculiar topic, and we're moving on to the next topic, which is about the private education system. And the question here is that, do you think that families who send their children to private schools should be required to pay taxes that support the state education system? Well, this question is more reasonable than the previous one because it seems fair to argue that reducing taxes for families who pay for private education makes sense because their children just simply don't go to public school. So they should not pay for public school or should not pay the taxes that support the state education. But it is also very selfish at the same time. Those who send their kids to private schools tend to be very wealthy and paying just a little bit money for the government to ensure that the state education system is also well funded. it's not really something that they cannot do or would hurt them like financially. So basically, there's nothing that's worth whining about. And by the way, we all pay a certain amount of tax for public services that we just don't use or we may not use in any time in the future. For example, no one would wish to get sick, so that the government actually spends some money paying for their medical costs, right? And we would not wish that our house would be on fire anytime, so that we would benefit from the fire department. And surely no one would wish that their house is robbed or their house would be broken into so that they could call the police. So even though we don't use these public services, we would not expect a tax reduction for this. And by the way, it would be really difficult to carry out such a scheme, because it is impossible to calculate exactly how much money should be deducted for each family whose children go to private school. For example, some families just don't have kids, or their kids may have grown up, but they still need to pay a lot of money through the tax system. And some families just choose to send a kid, like one of their kids, to private school, and the rest of the kids will go to state schools. It would be next to impossible to calculate exactly how much financial recession would be made for each family. By the way, it would be beneficial for richer families to pay the money that supports the public system. Because if they do so, a more educated workforce will result, and a more productive and prosperous nation would also be, the fruit of their effort. And of course, we're gonna see an increase in the quality of life for everyone, since the nation is gonna be richer and the government has more money to pay for people's welfare. So it is reasonable to say that everyone in society is gonna benefit from this. And it is just asinine to assume that parents of children who attend private schools should be, receiving any financial concession. Okay, so that's it for the first two topics. We're gonna talk about the role of uniforms in an educational setting. Do you think that children should be forced to wear uniforms, or they should be allowed to wear whatever they like? Well, of course, we're going to assess this topic from both sides of the debate so that you guys can have more ideas to answer the question if you are asked this question in the test room. Right, so on one side of the debate, some people believe that allowing children to dress as they please prepares them for the real world. Probably the main rationale in favor of this view is that when they are adults, they often compete with one another, both in and out of the workplace. And quite often, these contests are judged by material standards, such as, how much their clothes are, or how much their car is, or how big their house is. So by allowing children to dress as they please, schools can give them a taste of adult social reality. But this is very harmful because it condones and perpetuates unhealthy rivalry between people. There's many things in life, so it's safe to say that there's more to life than having material things. And this is the attitude that I believe that schools should foster in children instead of promoting social competition between them. And furthermore, mandating uniforms creates an atmosphere of academic. So students can differentiate themselves not by the labels on their shirts, but by the scores they achieve on the tests. So uniforms can ultimately remove social struggles so that young people may develop academically. Well, as far as I remember, when I was a high school student, I was often bullied or picked on by my classmates because they thought that I was less fashion conscious. But the reason was very simple. My family was not wealthy enough to afford me top quality or trendy jeans and trainers. But when our schools decided to mandate the use of uniforms, my social struggles actually disappeared because they no longer picked on me anymore. No one appeared to be more fashion conscious than the other, and the learning environment in my school was way more positive than before. And from time to time, I felt the pride in putting on my uniform. When I met some of my friends from other schools, I proudly said that I was from this school because I was wearing its uniform. It was such a pride, I felt such a pride in me. I was proud of being a student there. So all in all, I think that schools should use uniforms, and school children should also take pride in wearing uniforms, even though uniforms may appear to be a little bit, less fashionable than the clothes that may appear to be trendy among teenagers. And they should differentiate themselves by doing things that are more productive or useful or helpful rather than being purely fashionable. Alright, so one final topic for today is the use of academic tests, which are widely used to assess students' capabilities. I myself think that standardized testing is not fair and should be replaced with other forms of assessment. Of course, many people believe that standardized tests put everyone on an equal footing because these tests are designed to assess what school children learned in class, and therefore, those who prepare well will do well. But this line of reasoning is way overly simplistic, because many people just can't deal with stress and anxiety well, and they lose the ability to think rationally and coherently. And as a result, they may score poorly, but it by no means reflects their actual ability or intellect. I still remember that when I was a student, that there was this friend of mine who was very smart, but he never really did well on tests at school because he was a very shy and nervous kid. Whenever he took the test, his anxiety always overtook his ability to think. But if you guys got a chance to meet this guy, you would realize how smart he is. But teachers may point to the argument that if there were no standardized tests, how would teachers be able to assess their students? And how do they measure the amount of progress that their students make? So we need to think of other forms of academic evaluation. I do believe that there are some other more acceptable forms of evaluation. For example, students may be asked to complete a research essay, collaborate on a team project, or deliver a speech to an audience. So by allowing students to engage in forms of assessment that best suit their characters, schools can allow them to showcase their actual abilities. So at the end of the day, we can't really force a fish to compete with a monkey on how to climb a tree, right? So boards of education must realize that individual students are diverse in their characters, strengths, and weaknesses too. So they should therefore be evaluated accordingly in order to accurately assess their academic capabilities. All right, so let's wrap up our podcast today. Today we've talked about a lot of things such as the private education system, or whether schools should select their students based on gender, or whether standardized testing should be used anymore. So that's about it for today, and hopefully you guys have learned something, and see you guys in the next episode.